You don't rise to the level of your goals or your systems. You default to your mental wiring. And if you are like most founders, you're running your business on Windows 95. That's why you procrastinate. That's why you get distracted. That is why you are inconsistent. That's why you overthink every move when your bank account is crying for help. That is the core reason why you eventually end up burning out. Meanwhile, elite performers, billionaires, execute under pressure like it's nothing because they have minds that are wired for it. They don't rely on motivation, they rely on mental reprogramming. And this video is about the 9 mental defaults that I have observed billionaires always have. See, 90% of entrepreneurs fail, and about 70% of those who don't fail never scale to 6 figures, and only 1.1% scale to 7 figures. Why is that? It's not because they don't try enough, it's not because they don't work hard or because they have a bad niche. No, the reason is biological. It's the fact that your brain did not evolve to handle the pressure of entrepreneurship. It evolved to keep you alive in the savannah, avoid pain, seek comfort, and conserve energy. And there's neurological evidence that most entrepreneurs waste up 70% of their days in low-value tasks and distractions that over time wire their man for low performance. The average deep work time per day is about 95 minutes. 70% of entrepreneurs experience burnout. 85% end up having bouts of self-doubt every single week. This is not a calendar problem. It is a performance problem, and it lives in your brain. Why does this happen? Well, see, your brain is a pattern machine. It runs automatic scripts under pressure, most invisible to your mind. And I call these mental defaults, and they are subconscious responses that activate when you are not conscious. They're pre-installed neural scripts, hardwired by a mix of your evolution, right? Your brain evolved for survival, your repetition, your past patterns under stress, your environment, what you have normalized, and a lack of training because you haven't yet learned how to override them. And most people are absolutely oblivious to the fact that they are operating subconsciously. They have instinct, but they don't see them. I remember, for instance, working with a client not long ago that he had an incredible business, but he was sabotaging the growth of that business. And he told me, I don't understand why when I'm about to sign a very important deal, I back out. Why do I do that? Well, because he hadn't yet trained his mind to rewire the subconscious response to that specific deal that he was wanted to sign. And that is why those deals were falling through. But an elite founder, a billionaire, will just pause, breathe, reframe what just happened, have a review of why did he not sign the deal, create a system to improve his subconscious response next time that deal show up, and have a clear recommitment to try and run that system again. See, that is the core difference of why some average founders never make it, while 99% of founders operate on Windows 95. Elite performers and billionaires run on DARPA-level operating systems that are optimized for speed, trust, calm, and decisive action. The good news is that those defaults are trainable. In fact, Huberman at Stanford has documented how focused attention creates rapid neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself. So when you're facing a challenge, you have 2 choices. Either you default to the inbuilt negativity patterns, avoidance, overthinking, procrastination, or you override that pattern by taking a different action. Each override creates a new pathway, and over time, the path becomes clearer, stronger, easier to walk. It ends up becoming your new default. This is how we help another client who was stuck at about 28K for about 2 years to rewire totally her whole approach to sales. We rewired how he showed up in his content. We rewired how he was conducting the sales call, how much outreach he was making. And over time, guess what? He doubled the business. And now we're all ready to explore the 9 mental defaults that, in my opinion, make billionaires billionaires. And they're not habits, they're operating principles, they're mental defaults that make them who they are. First, bias for action. See, they all move fast, not necessarily perfectly, but decisively. So Jeff Bezos has this quote saying that most decisions should be made with 70% of available information. So they act before self-doubt has a chance to catch up. Amazon Prime was launched before the math made sense. Amazon Web Services before the market existed. He decided to acquire Whole Foods in about 30 days. So while most founders wait for certainty, Bezos moves as fast as possible to get a competitive edge. Then you have a bias for optimism. See, they all assume things work out and then act accordingly. While others see failure as final, they see it as feedback. Best example, Elon Musk. He launched 3 rockets in the beginning of SpaceX that exploded, but still was able to put the last bit of money he had to make it work. Over time, on the 4th launch, he made it work. The third bias for systems thinking. They do not solve problems at the surface. They look for the root patterns, like Ray Dalio, who built decision algorithms at Bridgewater to prevent human error and turn mistakes into systems. They do not put out fires. They fireproof their mind and their business. The fourth is a bias for leverage and not effort. See, they refuse to win through effort. They win through amplification. Naval Ravikant says this perfectly. Embrace quota media who scale without your permission. The fifth is a bias for recovery, no exertion. They treat energy for what it is, a strategic asset to protect. Bill Gates was famous for going 1 week at a time to have think weeks, to have the time to process and recover. Bias number 6 is letting go. See, when the truth changes, you have to pivot. You have to avoid getting trapped into your ego and look at reality for what it is, something to be decoded and actually be implemented on. And the best example of this is Steve Jobs was fired from Apple, but instead of wallowing, he went to Pixar, built that into a billion-dollar company, and was eventually brought back to save Apple from itself. Resistance is ego, but integration of that is what gives you power. Then the 7th bias is what I call identity level execution. It's not about having the right habits or mindset. No, it's about rewiring your mind at the root so you become the thing that you do. Like Warren Buffett, he doesn't follow value investing principles. He embodies them. He doesn't try to be patient. He is patient. For decades, he held Coca-Cola through 8 crashes, not because he was disciplined, because he was identified with his value investing method. The 8th bias is emotional stability. See, I love Richard Branson. He's one of the coolest guys creating companies in more than 400 different industries. And one of the things that he does is that he is constantly leaning on his emotions, specifically on fun, to make things worth it. Instead of having to suffer, to go through resistance to create the life he wants, instead he leans into emotions the right way. He capitalizes on fun. He capitalizes on surprise. He capitalizes on starting new things and consistently outperforming his past self, not because he grinds it through, but because he creates the right emotional cocktail he needs to really look forward building that new business. And finally, a bias for feedback loop driven optimization, which if you have been following this channel, to me is the only secret in life. It's all about shipping fast and iterating based on truth. And the best example of this is the James Dyson, who built 5,127 prototype of his vacuum cleaner before one worked. He didn't launch a guess. He failed and recalibrated thousands of times. He burned millions of pounds and hundreds of hours, if not thousands, to get the product right, not by visualizing it, but by consistently putting it to test. Feedback is not optional. It literally is the path to elite performance. And if you're still watching this video, this tells me you are serious about success. You already understand something crucial. That working harder will not fix your broken defaults. Rewiring your mental operating system actually will. That is what we do at Selfmastered. It's not about trying harder. It's about consistently changing how you relate to the core thing that you right now don't look forward to doing. And that is how you over time think like a billionaire, act like a billionaire before you have the billion, because you are doing the things that need to be done to get to billion-dollar status. Over the past 5 years, we'll have hundreds of founders rewire their mental operating system, and they all at least triple their productivity. In 95% of cases, they say the procrastination, self-doubt, and overwhelm is absolutely gone. If you really want to update your Windows 95 mental operating system to a DARPA level operating system that defaults to peak performance, book a decoding call now. We'll find out exactly what is keeping you stuck, but more importantly, how to rewire it fast. The link is in the description. If you truly want to succeed, you have to rewire your mind. There's no other option, because you don't rise to the level of your goals or your system. You default to the level of your mental wiring. If you are wired for elite performance, you will have elite results. That is a law of the universe, and I highly encourage you that you embrace it as fast as possible. See you on the call.